Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be continuing my competition advice series, and I'm going to talk about the concept of playing the way you train. This is mainly used in sports when people try to do a crazy shot or something they've never practiced before in a game. Invariably, it doesn't work because that shot takes years of practice to get right, and they haven't done that yet. Now, that version of the difference between training and competitions doesn't really apply to cubing. I don't think that many people are trying crazy solutions in comp when they can't do it at home. However, this can also go the other way, when you, in cubing terms, try to safety a solve just a little bit too much. And this aspect is what I'm going to be discussing today. Now, I'm not saying you should never safety a solve, and you should just turn as fast as possible and do the craziest solutions. There's an optimal level for certain solves. Really, what I want to give you in this video is a strategy on how to safety solves and choose solutions in competitions responsibly. It's worth noting that this is most relevant to short events, especially ones you can one look. First up, we'll talk about how this concept applies to the solutions you choose. In competitions, it can be natural to choose solutions that you think are more simple and safe. For example, in Pyraminx, you might know the ML4E, but choose to still rotate and do the L4E instead, because that's what you're more comfortable with. This is fine, and a common piece of competition advice is to not implement stuff you've learnt too close to the competition. Now, this is a valid piece of competition advice, but there becomes an issue when you get into your head that doing L4E or any other more simple algorithm set is inherently safer or more consistent than doing ML4E or any other more advanced algorithm set. You get a benefit from doing a safer solution because you haven't practiced the advanced solution enough. This benefit will eventually disappear, and in fact, you'll be putting yourself at a greater risk of messing up when you choose to do what you think is the safer solution. What this comes back to is how you practice. If at home you've been doing an advanced solution for a certain type of scramble for the last 6 months, you should do that, not the more simple solution if you get a similar scramble in competition. Because trying to do something that you haven't practiced in 6 months is not safe. This sounds like a really simple piece of advice, but it can be a really difficult thing to implement. Naturally, you will want to do the simpler solution, especially when the solve is really important or if you need to safety it, because you really don't want to mess up that solve. However, if the more advanced solution is what you would naturally do at home, doing that in competition is the safer option, even if it doesn't seem that way when a PR, NR, or even world record is on the line. Next, we'll talk about turn speed, and this is the factor we associate the most with the idea of safetying a solve. Basically, let's say you get a scramble where at home you might turn at 8 moves a second. You can turn a bit slower, say reducing it to 7, which obviously means your solve will be a bit slower, but also means that you're a lot less likely to mess up. Obviously, you're not thinking, oh yeah, let's reduce the TPS by 1. You're thinking, okay, let's not go crazy with the turning on this one. But the point is, you're turning slower to make it less likely that you mess up. Following this train of thought, you might take it even further. In the example of someone who turns at 8 moves a second at home, they might decide they really need to not mess up this competition solve, and then turn at 4 moves a second. In this scenario, they're probably more likely to mess up than if they turned at 7 or even 8 moves a second. Why? Because they're not playing the way they train. For someone who turns at 8 moves a second on average, their comfortable turning speed would be, let's say, 6 to 10. Again, the exact numbers don't matter, just how they compare to each other. In this case, turning at 4 moves a second would be outside their comfortable turning speed, and it might have been literally years since 4 turns a second was inside that range. A great way to show this in a competition is when you see a top cuber get a super easy scramble on Sol 5. In Jacob Hibbs's first European record Pyraminx average, he needed to get 1.65 on Sol 5 for BPA and got a 7-move no-tip scramble. Well, this is great. Now he can just massively safety that solve and get the record, right? Well, let's take a look at what happened. Wow, surely a bit risky to turn that fast. Maybe he didn't care about the average and just wanted a good single. Well, no. He actually did the least risky option, turned at the slower end of his comfortable speed range, and got the result. The point to take away from this section is that if you want to safety a solve, there's only so safe that you can go before you stop seeing that benefit and start seeing the opposite. Learn where that level is for you and do not go below it in competition. The final thing that I want to say is that play the way you train is also a more general point, and fundamentally why a lot of the common pieces of competition advice work. Why does competition simulation help you perform in competitions? Because if you haven't practiced solving in an average of 5, or even used a stack mat since your last competition, you're not going to be able to do those things effectively. When you do a competition, you ideally want to be emulating things you've done hundreds of times, not trying something new or something you haven't practiced for years.